He told us a lot of things.
Anything in particular that's memorable?
Nope.
Did you see anything that you didn't expect today?
They just played better than us. I don't know what you want me to say. It's like they made more plays than us, and that's what it come down to. I mean, we had our opportunities. It wasn't nothing special that they did. We dropped balls, we turned the ball over, gave up sacks, threw errant passes. That's it. They scored more points than us.
Can you put into words the disappointment you feel right now?
We lost.
I know you're disappointed not just for yourself and your teammates, because you guys talked about how you are a band of brothers coming in. And it's got to be real tough for everybody in that locker room.
Force y'all to throw the ball. You throw the football. That was the game plan. Hold the box, one-on-one man on side. They got a couple of big plays.
Cam clearly upset after the loss. He spoke briefly to reporters and then he walked out. Stephen A., do you have a problem with how he handled this?
Yeah, I do. It was an incredibly disappointing ending to an unquestionably illustrious season. Cam Newton showed us that he still has some growing up to do. Cam Newton showed us that everything that his father came on this show in San Francisco and proclaimed was utterly false. Because in the end, when he had an opportunity to stand up and be the man that he's been expressing that he had become, he passed the buck. And that's really what this comes down to. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't make him a bad person. Doesn't make him a bad guy. He still warrants league MVP honors. He's still the future face of the National Football League as far as I'm concerned. He's a spectacular talent who had a spectacular season. Doesn't take away from all of his work in the community, his philanthropy, his generosity, all the good deeds of him giving the footballs to little kids after touchdowns are scored. None of that should be ignored. But it will be, because it's the Super Bowl. And at the end of the day, the guy that was dabbing and had a nation of folks dabbing, that had us conversing about everything from celebrations to the celebratory tendencies of African-American athletes and beyond, ultimately had an opportunity to stand up and just be a grown man when you lost, to be just as grown up when you're losing or when you've lost, as celebratory as you were when you were winning. And you passed the buck on that. Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Jonathan Stewart, and so many others stood there answering questions in the aftermath of a loss, hurting just as much as Cam Newton, having gone through as much pain as him. But nevertheless, they had to stand up there and be professionals and deal with the situation. And he elected not to do so. And that was what was sad about this. Now, I saw Marshall Faulk talking last night, along with others, trying to give explanations. I listened to Brian Dawkins talking on Mike and Mike this morning about how there was somebody for the Denver Broncos right nearby talking about how they had humbled Cam Newton and how that may have contributed to him getting up and walking out of his post-game press conference. Still not an excuse. Can't do that. Not after the way you celebrated. Not after the way you had a nation of people standing up in support of you celebrating. Not after you reminded us midway through the season that if somebody had a problem with you, do something about it. Don't let you in the end zone. Well, the Denver Broncos did just that. And then you come out and you make statements like, they really didn't do all that much. I'm paraphrasing here, but I think that was your statement. It was something along the way. I'm looking for it here, Skip. He said they made more plays than us. We had our opportunities. There wasn't nothing special that they did.
Yep.
Sacking you 6 to 7 times is nothing special.
Yep.
Neutralizing your offense is nothing special. Being in your face all night long is nothing special. And by the way, this is an elite defense. And so to not be willing to give your contemporaries the credit that they deserved because they earned it in victory, albeit at your expense, it shows the difference between professionalism and amateurism. It shows the difference between grown men and boys striving to become men. And that's what this comes down to. I'm not trying to be harsh on Cam Newton because I love the brother, but I am highlighting and illuminating what I undoubtedly know a nation of critics will do to him. in the days, weeks, and months to come. This is one of those moments where he will always be remembered for how he conducted himself in defeat. They will not let it go away. It will stay with him for a very long time, if not the rest of his career. And by the way, for the record, his daddy did not help, because he came on the air being every bit as out there as his son was.
That's true.
In celebrating. And we couldn't find anybody when they lost. That is unfortunate. Period.
I appreciate everything you just said. I must tell you from my heart, I'm a little conflicted here. It's apparent that Cam Newton is what he's always been. He's a sore loser. He's a bad loser. He hates it. He can't stomach it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to associate with his teammates when it's happening. You and I criticized him in the past, if we go back a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. Remember how he'd put the towel over his head and go down to the end of the bench while they're getting ramrodded and act like, I don't want to associate with that mess over there. I'm better than that. And he would sit and sulk, and he would sulk and pout in his post-game interviews. And all of a sudden, I'm flashing back last night. I'm thinking, wow, it's the same guy. Okay, here's why I'm conflicted. At least, like, I don't want him to be a phony. I don't want him to be inauthentic. I don't want him to try to be somebody because we want him to be that he's not. And I think he just showing you flat out right in your face last night, hey, this is who I am. I love to win. I have fun winning. But when I lose, I don't want to be around any of y'all. I don't want to answer any of these dumb questions. We lost. They played better. What else do you want me to say? I'm not going to condemn him for that. I was trying to put it in the realm of comparisons to other athletes, and I was thinking, Michael Jordan could be a bad loser, and then I thought he never lost. So, you know, like, I don't know if he's a bad loser or not, because we never saw Michael Jordan on this stage have to answer those kind of questions, because they won every finals and he was always the MVP. But look, I shouldn't even invoke the name of Michael Jordan, because Cam has a long, long way to go, and I'm still not sure he's made of Michael Jordan stuff. I'm not sure. After last night, I need to see more. Hopefully, he will have other opportunities. But is it possible that's just who this young man is? Period. End of story.
Well, it's possible that that's who he is, but it's bad, and it needs to be stated. And let's understand why, just for the purposes of our national audience. Let's make sure we're clear as to why that is. Skip Bayless, I don't want to hear anybody talking about the way Cam Newton looked. I don't want to hear anybody talking about his body language. I don't care that, you know, he gave a one-word answer here or there. He was just frustrated. Skip Bayless, when you lose, you have the right for your mood per se to be any way you so choose. It's frustrating, if not flat out devastating. I am in no way judging Cam Newton for that. I am judging him for getting up and walking off. That's the crime.
Yep, okay.
Because you are the one that wanted the spotlight shined on you. You are the one that had a nation of folks dabbing.
Fair.
You are the ones that's been excessive in victory, excessive to a point where you've offended some of your contemporaries, some of the competitors along the way. Akeem Talib spoke out against him after the game. Chris Harris spoke out about him after the game, along with several other Denver Broncos talk about. He didn't come. He never went against somebody like us. He thought he was all that. But now you found out who he really is. They were saying that. Not me, not you. They were saying that. So you clearly know that there was some cynicism, some at least to a small degree, some level of vitriol aimed in his direction. The point is, none of that matters. If you're Cam, if you're the man that your daddy came on the show and swore you were and are, you don't have to answer questions the way we think you should. You lost. And it's devastating. After all that hard work you put in, Cam Newton shouldn't be judged for that. But what he can be judged for is getting up and walking away. Now you look like a coward. And that's the problem. I'm not calling him a coward. Wait a minute. I'm not calling him a coward. I'm telling you what he looks like. I'm not character assassinating him. I'm not defining him. What I am doing is highlighting for him the imagery that he gave off. If you come across as pouting to the point where you get up and walk away, refusing to answer additional questions after inviting attention upon yourself all year long, you look like a coward.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean he is one. I'm not calling him one. I would never do that to this young brother, this lion that I think is going to be around for a very long time. I think he might be back in the Super Bowl next year. I certainly expect him to be back in the Super Bowl in the future. But I want him to make sure that when those moments arrive, you either need to humble yourself when you're winning, or you need to make sure that you do it when you're losing. You can't have it all. You can't be this way when you're losing and then hide, when you're winning, and then hide when you're losing. He came across bad. I'm not telling you this. I'm telling you how it looks. I'm not saying who he is. I think he's a good young man and a great, great player. But he looked bad last night. And the Denver Broncos are more qualified than anybody to say so, because they're the ones that had to listen to the chatter for 2 weeks. They're the ones that had to go up against them last night. And after humbling him, he still didn't give them their props. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Okay, my 2 cents from a distance is that when you are paid the most money on the football team to be the face of the football team and the franchise, then you have to put on a good face after the game. Now, again, I don't want you to be a phony, but you have to sit there and take it for your teammates. You have to set the tone. And as you said, a lot of his teammates were on other podiums sitting there taking it. To me, it takes more character to sit there for 15 minutes than to get up and walk away after 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So maybe the appropriate word in terms of how he looked isn't coward.
Okay.
How about a brat?
All right. There's spoiled brat going on here. And to your point about Cecil, the father, what was Cecil's turn about after seasons? He brings him in to kind of like fix him, or what was that?
He refines him every season. Yeah, he refines him every season.
Well, Cecil Newton Sr., then why does he look the same? Again, I don't think he's... First of all, you can't be as great as Cam Newton, because the more I think about it, people are going to run away with the word coward. You can't be what Cam Newton has been this year and be a coward. Of course he's not.
Understand.
People are going to look at it that way, but I don't think so. But a brat?
A brat? Yeah, there's spoiled brat going on, and boy, he had what a breakout year he had. But all of a sudden, he got humbled, and he needs to eat the humble pie as the face of the franchise after the game. And I saw our Tom Jackson after the game, the great Tom Jackson, who lost 2 Super Bowls for the Denver Broncos, and he said he stood by his locker for what seemed like hours after the game until the last questioner had asked the last question, because he thought that's what you're supposed to do when you lose the Super Bowl, and he hated it.
Here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line, Skip. It's the very last memory he's left for the football world for the entire offseason, which is 213 days away from the new season. After all the greatness that you put on display throughout the season, not just as a quarterback, but as a person, as a great young man, this is the memory you've left us with for the entire offseason.
Yep, and unfortunately, as Deion Sanders said on our show the other day, Cam was being played off against the man in Peyton Manning who wrote the manual on how to do post-game interviews, right? So it doesn't reflect well.
No. Not at all. And we're going to discuss this subject further when we move on. But again, it seems like both of you took major issue with him walking away more so than anything and not crediting those Broncos. All right, up next, will Peyton follow the lead of his owner, John Elway, and ride off into the sunset as Super Bowl champ? Manning gave no insight into his future, but should he hang him up? Skip and Stephen A. will give their take next.
You're wide awake in the